Good evening. Excellencies, honorees, distinguished guests, friends. My name is George Moose, and I have the privilege of serving as the chairman of the board of Search for Common Ground. And on behalf of my distinguished colleagues on the search board, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the 15th Annual Common Ground Awards. I would like to extend a very special welcome to the United States Secretary of State, the Honorable Hillary Rodham Clinton. I know from my own personal experience that her work as a peace builder began long before she assumed her current role and important leadership responsibilities. Madam Secretary, we are honored by your presence this evening, and we are grateful for the support that you have shown for Search's work, most notably in your visits to Search's programs in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Cote d'Ivoire. May I also take this opportunity to acknowledge the presence here this evening of the staff of Search for Common Ground. They are the heart and the soul of our organization. Tonight, I want especially to acknowledge those who direct and manage Search's programs in some 30 countries around the world, many serving in places that are both difficult and dangerous. They are a source of inspiration for all of us, and we are delighted that so many of them have come here this evening to join us. As many of you know, Search for Common Ground is one of the oldest and most experienced organizations working in the field of international peace building. This year we celebrate our 30th anniversary, a 30-year record of helping millions of people around the world find constructive ways to address societal conflict. Throughout its history, Search's work has been grounded in the understanding that while conflict in life is inevitable, violent conflict is not. Experience teaches us many lessons about how conflict can be transformed and resolved by peaceful and collaborative means. As some of you know, my own experience in working with Search for Common Ground goes back to 1993 when I was the Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs. Search at that time was our indispensable partner in seeking to prevent the outbreak of genocidal violence in Burundi, the kind of violence, alas, that tore apart neighboring Rwanda in 1994. I believed then, and I continued to believe today, that Search's work in Burundi made a major contribution to helping the people of Burundi steer a different course. And I would be so bold as to make the same claim for the work in which Search is currently engaged around the world. My colleagues on the Search board share that conviction, as well as a commitment to doing everything possible to ensure that that work will continue. The Common Ground Awards is yet another reflection of Search's mission and philosophy. It was Search's founder, John Marks, who established the awards 15 years ago to recognize and honor peace builders from around the world, people who have dedicated their lives to understanding differences, but acting to deepen commonalities. This evening's honorees join a long list of distinguished and courageous peace builders, people who have been a source of hope to everyone who longs for a more peaceful and prosperous world. We are honored also that all of you have demonstrated your commitment to that vision by being here with us this evening. And we are especially grateful for your support for Search's work. And now please join me in welcoming our Master of Ceremonies for this evening, Search for Common Ground's Senior Vice President, Susan Collin Marks. I know of no one who cares more deeply about Search's mission, a commitment that is reflected in her decades of service both in the front lines of violent conflict and at a policy-making level in building peace around the world. Susan.
Thank you, dear George. And after all that acknowledgement from you, I would like to turn the tables. This is George's last night as chairman of the board of Search for Common Ground. And on behalf of the entire staff, I want to thank you from the bottom of all our hearts for your wisdom and guidance over the last 4 years. Thank you, George. Madam Secretary, honored guests, greetings to you all on this, my favorite evening in Search for Common Ground's year. It comes at a time of profound upheaval on our planet, and every day we are presented with images and stories of humanity at its worst. We know that this is only one piece of the human story, yet it can be overwhelming. Tonight, we shine the spotlight on people being their best, people who by their lives, their work, and their courage demonstrate that it's possible for one person or a group of people working together to make a profound difference in the lives of others. They hold a mirror to the best in all of us in this room, and for that, we thank them. They show us our potential, embodying as they do forgiveness, inspiration, strength, vision, passion, and love. Their compelling stories underscore our belief that all of us have the capacity and the responsibility, no matter what we do, to live our lives through the lens of our common humanity. We want to start by sharing with you the trailer to Search for Common Ground's first ever dramatic full-length film. We've been making TV for 25 years, and this year, with Lama Films, we co-produced a film called Under the Same Sun. It's the story of two businessmen, one Palestinian and the other Israeli, who set out to do business and end up catalyzing peace. The film is set in the future, and it looks back at an Israeli-Palestinian peace agreement that was made in 2014. But there's more to it than that. At Search, we know that we need to be doing on the inside what we want to see out there in the world. We need to be the change we work for every day in our lives. This film was co-produced by Amir Harel, an Academy Award-nominated Israeli film producer, and directed by Sama Zoabi, a leading Palestinian filmmaker. With Palestinian and Israeli cooperation at the heart of the production, the film is a testament to this core principle of who we are and what we stand for. Let's see the trailer.
You are in a Palestinian land fully controlled by Israel.
אתה יודע שאין חשמל שם בכפר.
אז מה אתה אומר? שאתה רוצה לספק להם חשמל?
في عندي مشروع ما صوت الجنريتور تخيل العيش من دونه.
وبلاش يعني اسرائيل.
بزنس.
פשוט נראה לי ממש לא הזמן המתאים לקחת סיכונים עכשיו.
بدنا تشتغلش مع الإسرائيليين.
كل الواحد كسروا امبارح بالليل.
It's a life threat I'm dealing with here.
אתה נזהר אני מקווה.
ولا حدا غير يشوف إيجابية بهذا المشروع ولا حدا. You know what, Shaul? We should not stop. Imagine if the pressure comes from within. Imagine if the Palestinians and the Israelis call their leaders to make peace.
אמין.
עשרות אלפי מפגינים מתכנסים עתה בערים תל אביב ורמאללה.
At last count, the tributes, articles, and blogs about US Ambassador Chris Stevens totaled 48 million. Diplomats, friends, colleagues, people he never knew, Americans, Arabs, and particularly Libyans, have been pouring out their hearts, saying, people like Chris are like diamonds in the dust. May Allah be well pleased with him. That he is the man who convinced the Libyans that the best part of their history was actually lying before them. That his gift of friendship, his love for his family, colleagues, friends, the people he met every day wherever he went, this is who Chris was. We at Search first met Chris 15 years ago. We spent time with him in Washington, Jerusalem, and Libya. This July, John and I and colleagues had tea with him at the ambassador's residence in Tripoli. We miss him, and we hold his family in our hearts. We join in the universal grief for this very special envoy who put his arms around the Middle East to help heal it with his commitment, his love, and his devotion to our common humanity. He put his arms around all of us. And we celebrate Chris bravely going to Benghazi on a cargo ship at the height of the Libyan revolution. Chris as a brother. His sister Anne says the world needs a lot more big brothers like Chris Stevens. Chris as diplomat, quizzical observer, and engaged insider. Chris as friend, colleague, guide. Memorials are held in buildings and structures, but they live in people. When we leave here tonight, let's all go out into this world as walking, living, breathing memorials to the spirit of Chris Stevens. He showed us the answer to poet Mary Oliver's searching question. Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?
Today, we must reaffirm that our future will be determined by people like Chris Stevens and not by his killers. Today, we must declare that this violence and intolerance has no place among our United Nations.
My name is Chris Stevens, and I'm the new U.S. Ambassador to Libya.
Ambassador Chris Stevens was a 21-year veteran of the Foreign Service. Shortly before he left to begin his diplomatic post in Libya, he made this video. He visited the monuments of slain American heroes who died for a cause they believed in. Maybe a bit of foreshadowing. During the Libyan revolution to oust Muammar Gaddafi, Stevens served as the U.S. envoy to the Libyan opposition, arriving on a cargo ship in the port of Benghazi. Stevens grew up in Northern California, attended the University of Berkeley, and then joined the Peace Corps in 1983, serving in Morocco. He spoke French and Arabic and spent most of his Foreign Service career posted throughout the Middle East and North Africa. His friends are remembering him.
He risked his life to stop a tyrant, then gave his life trying to help build a better Libya.
He took on hard assignments. I mean, his whole career was a lot of hard Foreign Service assignments. So Chris is not somebody who was looking for cushy, easy assignments. He wanted to be where the action was.
He just enjoyed the job of representing the United States to the outside world, and really loved that kind of engagement. It's a big loss, obviously, for his family, but for America, he was the best and the brightest.
It is a very sad day for me since I learned the death of my dear friend and colleague, Ambassador Chris Stevens. I know Chris for the last 6 years. I must tell you, Madam Secretary, and tell the American people that Chris is a hero. He's the man who believed in the Libyans and believed they will achieve the democracy after 42 years of the dictatorship.
Stevens was well known and well liked on Capitol Hill. In July, Senator McCain posted this picture calling Stevens, quote, one of America's finest diplomats who also makes one of the best cappuccinos in Tripoli, Stevens being the first ambassador since 1979 to be killed in the line of duty.
Chris Stevens loved his work. He took pride in the country he served, and he saw dignity in the people that he met. And I promise you this, long after the killers are brought to justice, Chris Stevens' legacy will live on in the lives that he touched. In the tens of thousands who marched against violence through the streets of Benghazi. In the Libyans who changed their Facebook photo to one of Chris. In the signs that read simply, Chris Stevens was a friend to all Libyans.
We are moved that our iconic and distinguished Secretary of State, Hillary Rodham Clinton, has come to present this award to Chris's sister, Anne Stevens Sullivan, for Chris's life of transcendence over cultural differences. Madam Secretary, thank you for coming. Your presence honors Chris and his family and says it all.
This is a very moving moment to honor someone whose life and work truly exemplified the meaning of search for common ground. And I greatly appreciate everyone who has supported this organization and its mission over a number of years. John Marks and Susan Colin Marks, my longtime friend, Ambassador George Moose, members of the Diplomatic Corps and supporters of Search for Common Ground. I also want to congratulate all of tonight's honorees. It's a special privilege and honor to have Chris's sister Anne with us tonight. This has been, for everyone, a very difficult personal ordeal. But of course, for Chris's family, it has been so much more. They grieve and they remember. And they have shown such grace and dignity in the weeks since they were thrust into the harsh spotlight of history. In the rush of headlines, it is easy to forget that at the center of this national tragedy was such a real person with passion and principles, with humor and irony, with ambition and humility, with friends and colleagues and loved ones. Chris Stevens was a son of the West, He hiked and jogged and danced his way through the hills and forests of Northern California, and then he did it in Libya. He loved the cool, refreshing fog of the Bay Area, the sight of the Golden Gate, and the warm embrace of his family. But his family gave him not only roots but wings, and he shared the restless soul of the frontier. His mother liked to say that he had sand in his shoes, always moving and running and working, seeking out new challenges and adventures. And there was music in his life. The son of a cellist, he himself played the saxophone, which of course for me friends in Jerusalem remember his passion for Palestinian songs as he would serenade them in Arabic. When Chris first took the Foreign Service exam in college, he was asked to compare American democracy with the freewheeling energy of jazz. One of his closest friends, Steve McDonald, remembers spending hours discussing the question about experimentation and improvisation, about the relationship between a brilliant soloist and a band that all has to pull together to achieve harmony. Later, Steve would come to think of Chris as a jazz diplomat. That really resonates with anyone who ever worked with or knew Chris, who saw his creativity and inspiration up close. Jazz musicians like to talk about playing the changes. Their art lies in the space between structure and spontaneity. Yes, they do master the technique, but then they begin to improvise. And that is how Chris worked. A young Foreign Service officer who was with him in Libya marveled at Chris's appetite for history and culture. He stayed up late reading memoirs of former Libyan leaders and delighted in sharing obscure historical trivia and cracking jokes, not just in Arabic, but in the local dialect. Other colleagues remember his endless patience and talent for listening, two characteristics that really are required to be a successful diplomat. As one of Chris's friends explained recently, you develop a relationship and a personal connection, and a series of connections become a network. Many Americans, well, we start at A and work down the list to F. But A to B is not a straight line, and Chris had an instinctive feel for this, how to get things done. He understood not just the science of diplomacy, but the art. He heard the music and the words, and he was committed to his mission of helping others find their own freedom. He found a second home amidst the shifting deserts and crowded cities of the Middle East. He climbed the Atlas Mountains, he wandered through Syrian souks, he jogged through Libyan olive groves, and he had so many moments of common ground. When the revolution broke out in Libya, I asked Chris to travel to Benghazi, and he did so on a Greek cargo ship, like a 19th century envoy. It certainly appealed to his romantic side. But his work was very much 21st century, hard-nosed diplomacy and relationship building. Even when a bomb exploded in the parking lot of the hotel where he was staying, he never wavered. Chris would have been the first to say that the terrorists who attacked our mission in Benghazi on September 11th did not represent the millions of Libyans who want peace and deplore violence. You saw and you heard the president's inspired and inspiring words about that. Chris understood that most people in Libya or anywhere reject the extremist arguments that violence and death are the only way to reclaim dignity and achieve justice. He understood that's why he was in Libya, and there was no substitute for going beyond the embassy walls, building relationships, and finding common ground. He also knew that when America is absent, especially from the dangerous places, there are consequences. Extremism takes root, our interests suffer, and our security at home is threatened. The State Department sends people to more than 275 posts in 170 countries around the world. Chris understood that diplomats must operate in many places where soldiers do not, where there are no other boots on the ground, and security is far from guaranteed. And he volunteered for those kinds of assignments. He understood that we will never prevent every act of terrorism or achieve perfect security in this world, and that our diplomats cannot work in bunkers and do their jobs, that we inevitably must accept a level of risk to protect our country, the country we love, and to advance our interests and values. Of course, it is also our responsibility to constantly improve, to reduce the risks our people face, to make sure they have the resources they need to do what we ask of them. And nobody takes that more seriously than I do and the security professionals at the State Department. We now have a formal accountability review board investigating the terrorist attack that killed Chris, and we will certainly apply its recommendations and lessons learned to improving security everywhere. It's appropriate that we do so based on facts and evidence. Chris's family, his colleagues at the department, and the American people deserve nothing less. As that process moves forward, though, we are taking immediate steps to bolster security and readiness. We've dispatched teams, joint teams, from the Department of State and Defense to review high-threat posts to determine whether there are other improvements we need in light of the evolving security challenges we now face. The men and women who serve our country overseas represent the best traditions of a bold and generous nation, and they are no strangers to danger. From Tehran and Beirut to Islamabad, East Africa, and Saudi Arabia, and now in Benghazi, and many other places in between over the years, we have seen our diplomats devoted to peace, targeted by terrorists devoted to death. But we cannot, indeed we must not be intimidated. We have to remain focused and clear in our vision of the kind of world we seek to build. Chris Stevens was an inspiration to all who served with him and knew him during his life. He remains an inspiration now, and I believe far into the future, because he exemplified the best of what we stand for, who we are as a people. And he believed in the search for common ground. So we thank you for recognizing this brave and good man, this consummate diplomat, this American hero. And now please join me in welcoming Ann Stevens to the stage.
Madam Secretary, distinguished guests, and dear friends, I am most honored to represent my family in accepting, on behalf of my brother Chris Stevens, this Search for Common Grounds award. As you know, when Chris was sadly killed in Benghazi on September 11th, he died carrying out his duties as the U.S. ambassador to Libya. He died carrying out an assignment he felt deeply passionate about. From an early age, Chris dedicated his life to diplomacy in the Middle East. He believed that diplomacy was an instrumental tool for building bridges between the people of the U.S. and the people of the Middle East. Chris loved the Middle East and found the culture, language, and politics of the region magical. His engaging personality, how many of my girlfriends had crushes on him, enabled him to cross the cultural divides with ease. Chris enjoyed talking to people from all walks of life and was keen to understand the thoughts and worries of those he met. In a region where being an American diplomat was challenging, Chris was well known and liked in the souks and coffee shops for his balanced views and his ability to relate all over the Middle East. Chris didn't shy away from high-risk assignments in violence-affected places. He eagerly served in Jerusalem and Libya during times of conflict. He thought that particularly in such complex political circumstances, diplomacy could play a critical role by facilitating dialogue and bringing people together. Chris was aware that violence leaves scarring wounds in a society and that overcoming this legacy is a long-term endeavor that needs to grow and be nurtured from within. Supporting this process was important for him. It's no surprise to me that Chris had a long-standing friendship with John and Susan Mark and appreciated their work. I understand that this summer Chris was discussing ways of getting Search for Common Ground work started in Libya, and that this is going to move forward. I know that he also explored the opening of an American university in Tripoli. Chris was an optimist, and he knew that real change had to be built from the ground up. He believed that it was possible, and he wanted to help build these bridges that would contribute to mutual understanding and lasting peace. Finally, Chris was a teacher, a born mentor to me, and I found out this last month for many who worked with him in the State Department. He served as a supportive role model for his form of diplomacy. His dear friend and colleague Jennifer Larson wrote that Chris was a mentor, a gentleman, a leader with a soft touch. As cultural attaché in Jerusalem, she organized musical events, exchanges, and speakers events with the Palestinian people, and Chris always came. She remembered bringing an American Muslim hip-hop group to a theater in East Jerusalem with an audience full of Palestinian families and youth. Chris got up to dance and clap with the audience, with somewhat awkward moves, but genuine enthusiasm, Jennifer said. That's the kind of person he was in our family and in the rest of the world. He always showed up, he caught on to the culture, and he participated with enthusiasm. Chris took great joy in seeing the Libyan revolution succeed and witnessing their free elections last summer. He wrote, "All in all, it's great to be back, especially in the new Libya. The whole atmosphere has changed for the better. People smile more, are much more open with foreigners." Those are the reports of an optimist, my brother. For us, this award is a wonderful recognition for the work Chris did and the man he was. While we're incredibly saddened that he's gone, our hope is that his legacy will live on and encourage others to continue to work towards the goals that Chris believed in. Thank you.
On January the 9th, 1961, after a court ordered their admission, Charlene Hunter Goltz and Hamilton Hamp Holmes walked onto the campus of the University of Georgia to register, the first African-American students to do so. Their presence sparked student riots, required their temporary evacuation, and eventually caused the stones of segregation to tumble down. With their entrance, which was more courageous than most of us can imagine, these teenagers took their historic place on the front lines of the civil rights movement. In her new book, To the Mountaintop, My Journey Through the Civil Rights Movement, Charlene writes that as she made that life-changing walk between jeering crowds, she knew she had to hold her head high, and she did. Years later, when she became a distinguished and sought-after reporter, she always looked for people who needed a voice to help them gain their rights, their freedom, and their human dignity. And she gave them that voice through the New York Times, PBS NewsHour, NPR, CNN, and more. Let's take a look.
That day, 50 years ago, when a federal judge forced the University of Georgia to let her in.
When you stand here, can you hear the sound of the crowd outside?
Oh, I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that. I mean, 2, 4, 6, 8, we don't integrate.
I'm not for integration. I'm for segregation, and I will be until I die.
They didn't have a clue who I was or what my dreams were, and the fact that my dreams were the same dreams that they had. We've got to start talking to people about our differences. I don't like the word colorblind because I'm colored. I have a color. You have a color. I don't want people to be colorblind. I want people to be sensitive to difference and to appreciate that there's nothing wrong with being different. I don't know how many social settings I go to, and my husband and I are the only 2 black people there. And it's not just class. I mean, part of it is class, but a lot of it is race. And we haven't dealt with that yet in this country. We need a Truth and Reconciliation Commission or something that brings this issue to the surface so that we can talk about it in a constructive way. And so we've got to come to grips with these things that upset people and figure out why people still hang on to some of these long-held prejudices that keep us from being the best we can be.
Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities, knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friend, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream.
Inspired by her mother and grandmother, who were self-educated, avid readers, and major advocates of education, Charlene Hunter Goltz had early dreams of being a journalist. From high school to this day, she has held a variety of positions in journalism, receiving a multitude of awards along the way.
But even as that debate brings the tortured past back into focus, Vietnam and America are beginning a more positive relationship to heal the wound that still demands closure.
Charlene couldn't be with us tonight because of surgery, and she's fine, by the way. Please welcome her beautiful daughter, Suzanne Stovell, to receive on her mother's behalf this award for a lifetime of commitment to an inclusive world. Susan.
You have to excuse me, that woman is my mother. Good evening. I am here representing that woman who is in the early days of a challenging recovery from surgery on her knee. Otherwise, she would be here in person. The reason I know my mother would not have missed this if she could have possibly avoided it is because she has been part of this event as Mistress of Ceremonies on 2 occasions. And that's because she believes in and embraces the mission of the organization and has told me each time how inspired she was, both because of what the Search for Common Ground represents and because of the wonderful people it singles out for its awards. People who have not just talked the talk of conflict resolution and mutual understanding, but have walked the walk even when the path was littered with danger, or when, as the Rwandan awardees tonight attest to, former enemies can be reconciled and lived prosperously and joyously together. And she asked me to say to each of the other honorees how much she admires them and how humbled she is to be in their company, for she shares their vision. Her latest book, To the Mountaintop, My Journey Through the Civil Rights Movement, is aimed at the same goal as Peace Child International, helping to inspire young people through the stories of other young people whose courage and committed action revealed the lie about separate but equal and changed the face of the Jim Crow South, and thus America in the eyes of the world, the point that being, when empowered, young people can do just about anything. My mother wanted you to know that she is here in spirit, just as she is sure that awardee Ambassador Chris Stevens is. Mom's spirit is one that has driven her to use her journalism to give voice to the often voiceless so that they can be empowered to take action as her generation did, to help make their lives and our world at home and abroad a place that respects all human beings regardless of their race, creed, or religion, the latter a goal of the religious organizations you honor here tonight. Among other things, my mother has been deeply involved in attempting to empower African journalists through the African Media Initiative and to advocate for them and protect them through the Committee to Protect Journalists, especially Ethiopian journalists, as they struggle to get their Ethiopian government to live up to its democratic promises, including freedom of speech. In June, she went to Ethiopia and urged the government to return to their original constitutional guarantees and free the journalist imprisoned on bogus charges. And it will be noticed that she has received this award, and she promises that she will work tirelessly to live up to it. And she hopes to see you all in the flesh again. I thank you.
It's hard to imagine the 1994 Rwanda genocide and its crushing legacy for all the Rwandan people. Many of us remember the anguished images that exploded on our screens and how we could barely watch for the horror of it all. Tonight, we celebrate the resilience of the human spirit that lives in a group of Rwandan women who 10 years later resolved to write a new chapter and tell a new story about their beloved country, a story of healing, hope, and love through drumming and ice cream. They called themselves Ingumasha, which means new era or new drum, breaking the taboo of drumming as the sacred preserve of men and opening their arms to all women both Hutu and Tutsi, they began to drum with passion and skill, discovering the power that lives in women's bones and energizing their vision of a new life. They also began to make ice cream, inviting the community, many of whom had only ever seen it in the movies, to come and see the dreams of women and come and taste it. Let's see the trailer to a new acclaimed documentary, Sweet Dreams, that tells their story.
umuganda itariki 22 z'ukwa kane n'intara yari gitangira hano hafi ni ku muhanda hano ruguru bamwiciye byahise bisakuza yishwe n'akanaka yishwe n'akanaka yishwe n'akanaka kandi nsanga ndabazi.
Ngomansha, it means a new drum and also a new kingdom. We wanted to propose a new chapter in the history of Culture in Rwanda, a new era.
We have orphans, we have widows, we have children of perpetrators.
We were proposing a space where people will feel safe again. And where women, especially we were not giving a lot of space and opportunities and chances, could have these opportunities with Ngomansha.
Reconciliation is not only about two people. People need to reconcile with themselves, with happiness, with life.
I see Kiki, she's the dream, and you and me, we are the arms and legs of that dream. So she imagines it, and we're the ones that really will make it move.
Abana benshi twiganye b'inshuti zanjye baramuze ariko biteka mudakunda harabura iki ngo mugaye sikirimo kuko zimera benshi ramajete na nubwo bara
ndabonaga mu mafilime no hanze gusa ariko zinaheze yuko no mu Rwanda bagikoye
Kwinjira n'umuntu ukabibera kuri ICC.
Since we are children from the childhood, and when everything you ask something, it's new, and trying is very important. I mean, when you believe that something is possible, it's done already.
The talented brother and sister filmmakers Lisa and Rob Fruchtman are in the audience. Please stand. And Let's also meet one of the entrepreneurial ice cream women from Blue Marble Ice Cream in Brooklyn, Alexis Meeson. And now, meet three of the drummers and listen carefully to the song of their drums. It's an honor for us to welcome these drummers, Mata, Clementine, and Clementine, to Washington, D.C. In Africa's Great Lakes region, we have always believed in the power of music and dance to bridge divides and heal wounds. In 2008, our Congo team organized a regional drumming festival deep in eastern Congo. Ingomasha came, and their courage was extraordinary as they ventured into communities which had known a brutal war and where there was deep-seated prejudice against Rwandans. Sharing the stage with Congolese and Burundian drummers, these elegant, powerful women drummed and danced a message of peace that went straight to the hearts of everyone who listened. The group's founder, Kiki Gakira, gave birth to a baby girl just 1 week ago. So we're delighted to have Kiki's younger sister, Viviane Gakira, here to receive the award on the group's behalf.
Distinguished guests, it is a great honor for me, with Nira Zeimana Mart, Uwinija Clementine, and Uwa Maria Clementine, to be here tonight to accept the award for the first time. But afterward, it was with joy and enthusiasm that we invaded the drumming space from which we were excluded for centuries. In our hand, the drumstick became our magic wand, empowering us, allowing us to play a more active role in our society and contributing to the development of our culture, improving our self-confidence and respect by offering us recognition in our own families and societies. Today, Ingomasha has become an amazing story for ordinary women who became the extraordinary architect for their own lives. For the last 8 years, Ingomasha has become a unique army, an incredible family of sisters, planting with passion, faith, a culture of unity, reconciliation, peace, and hope. Thank you for honoring our work for this award tonight. It comes as an encouragement and strengthens our commitment to our goals. I would like to express our gratitude to the University Center of Art and Drama of the National University of Rwanda for offering, since 2004, the physical spaces where we share, exchange, learn, and live together. Our gratitude goes to the best dream partners, Jenny and Alexi Mason. This award is also yours. Thank you for every drop of joy and hope that ice cream is bringing in Rwanda. Thank you, Rob and Lisa, for sharing our story to the world. Let me end by saying thank you to the Search for Common Ground for letting us to share this stage and our story with the peace builders, with other peace builders. Thank you very much.
Exactly 30 years ago, there was a traffic jam outside the Kennedy Center here in Washington, D.C. Peace Child and Search for Common Ground had caused it, and it was a source of great pride and jubilation because that night we sold out the Kennedy Center. Both organizations were committed to improving East-West relations and preventing nuclear war. And we co-produced a musical play that starred actress Susanna York and the children from Washington's own Duke Ellington School of the Arts. Peace Child had previously sold out the Royal Albert Hall in London. But for Search, this was our first major project and our first experience of what would become one of our trademark activities, using popular culture to change attitudes and behaviors. Peace Child went on to produce musical plays for children across the world and has since developed a global network across 150 countries, reaching thousands of youth with the message, "Be the change you want to see in the world." Here is some 1980s footage that captures the exuberance and power of those first years. Don't let the creativity and fun of the performance fool you into forgetting the deadly serious message and the cleverness of its delivery.
The show was born in England in 1981 as a celebration of peace for United Nations Week. It tells the story of Soviet and American children who meet and initially find common ground through their fear of nuclear war.
I don't want to die, not at all. I want to live. I want to go off and lead a full life.
They become friends and get on television, and eventually, after many adventures, are the catalysts that bring about peace between their two nations. The play premiered in North America at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. And finally, in the summer of 1985, the play was performed in the Soviet Union.
Я жить хочу, хочу я жить.
Peace Child was something of a hit in the USSR. The sight of Soviet and American children singing Peace Child songs together, now newly translated into Russian, proved irresistible to Soviet audiences. The cast even got on the primetime nightly news with the Soviet equivalent of Dan Rather. In 1986, American children were there again, receiving the same enthusiastic, warm receptions everywhere they went. But getting Soviet children to come to the United States, that was much harder. It had never happened before. The appeal to leaders to introduce large systems of youth exchange has always been part of a Peace Child play. And in 1986, the Soviet authorities said yes to Peace Child. 10 Soviet and 12 American children toured a dozen North American cities in the first ever joint Soviet-American musical theater production. So why did the Soviet authorities say yes to Peace Child when they had for so long said no to many much larger organizations?
Let's move on, and please welcome David Wilkham and Rosie Simmons, the extraordinary, innovative, and visionary founders and leaders of Peace Child International, to receive their awards for 30 years of inspiring youth to be agents of peace.
Well, I feel I should sort of finish off where the video kind of stopped. And what happened was that we took Americans to the Soviet Union, and in 1986 we toured a Russian rock band. We toured 50 people, a Russian rock band and all the kids, and the Soviets didn't let us know that they would let them out till 2 days before, which was quite hairy, really. And as many times and many times again over the years, we've relied on volunteers who fed and organized all these people. And soon we had exchange programs going between Kiev and Toronto and all kinds of places, small towns in the USA, getting to know people across the world. And after that, you know, we had a lot of exchange programs, and kids would come back and say, sometimes it's easier to make friends with people across the world than it is in our own backyard. And we had shows in Miami and Washington, D.C., where we had inner city kids meeting with suburban kids and those who were homeless and those who had lots of money, mixing people together. And that's what we really have done all the time with Peace Child, bringing people together, trying to find common ground. And we really thank John for giving us that opportunity right in the beginning. And since then, we've gone on to make books, again written by young people for young people. And our mission is empowering young people to be the change in the world they want to see in the world. And first inform yourself and then take action. And young people need to know and share what's going on, learn from each other, learn from older people and younger people working together. And our office is staffed entirely by young people who give up a year of their life to come and work with us. And just before I came away, the Argentinian girl asked me to proofread something for the blog, which was written by Willow, one of our volunteers who just left. And Virginia asked Willow, what did you learn from this experience? And Willow said, I think that what I learned the most is that if you ask young people to do something, they will just go and do it straight away, and do actually more than what you asked in the first place. And yes, trusting other people, working with other young people has been an eye-opener. And over all these years, it's never stopped being an eye-opener to David and I. And we're just very grateful for this opportunity and for all the people, young and old, who've helped to build Peace Child and keep it going the last 30 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, John. And thank you all the searchers at Search for Common Ground for bringing us here tonight. It's an honor beyond compare. I remember back shortly after that grainy footage was shot, being in the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York, planning our next show, which was in New York. And everywhere you look in St. John the Divine, there's little cupid things saying, give here, donate here. And I'm not as good a fundraiser as John, and I never had any money, and I felt a bit ashamed. And then I thought, actually, I'm going to donate my life to this work. And I did, and I have. And like the Cathedral of St. John the Divine, that work is never finished. And I remember my son shortly after saying, Daddy, when there's peace in the world, can we stop doing Peace Child? Sorry, son. Work is never finished. And in fact, we're doing another Peace Child next year, a new one, with Mikhail Gorbachev's Green Cross International Organization in Geneva. And it's around the UN theme of the future we want, children imagining the future as they would like to see it, and then figuring out what they're going to do with their lives to bring that future about. And one of the things that we find now that young people are most concerned about is getting a job. My life will begin when I get a job, so many young people tell me. So Peace Child has moved into the business of empowering young people, which is our mission statement, to help each other to create jobs. And this is one of the many ways in which Peace Child has changed and evolved over the years, but still, peace remains at the heart of it. And I just got back from Islamabad, where we're going to be holding our 7th World Youth Congress, and it'll be co-hosted by Indian and Pakistani youth, to show the world that they don't want the next 60 years to look like the last, and that they believe in peace in their region. And we're looking at co-hosting a North-South Korean World Youth Congress in the future, maybe one in Cuba. And actually a couple of Chinese journalists said, well, when are you going to hold a Peace Child Congress in China? And I said, well, when we can do it in Lhasa. And they laughed at me. They thought I was joking. But I'm not joking, because I want, until my last breath, to continue empowering young people to struggle to wipe the last traces of tyranny, injustice, and repression from the face of this earth. And when I do so, I shall feel that maybe, John, we have deserved this great accolade you've given us tonight. So thank you, but I just would like to say a final word to thank Rosie, because every marriage, every happy marriage is a minor miracle. But God and Rosie had to work especially hard in this case because I'm so difficult. But she did, and God did, and I did, and that happiness has produced not only Peace Child, but our wonderful son, Alexander, who's with us tonight, and his extraordinary sister, Natasha, who's back home in England, and without doubt, a better me. So, thank you, my love. And in the words of that sappy old song, I and Peace Child are everything we are because she loved me.
I was just checking on the video. We're going to give it a try. So, our final award. At a time when religious extremists are pushing agendas that tear us apart, these brave and brilliant religious leaders are committed heart and soul every day to knowing each other's faiths and to bringing them together. They steadfastly refuse the voices in their own faith communities that call them to circle the wagons, and instead offer wisdom and hope through interfaith dialogue with generous and open hands. 2002 Common Ground awardee Archbishop Desmond Tutu says that God's love is too great to be confined to any one religion. Through their work and in their lives, former Archbishop of Canterbury, Lord George Carey, Rabbi David Rosen, and Imam Faisal Abdul Rauf live this deep knowing, inspiring healing and understanding between the Abrahamic faiths and all faiths in our world, and as their friends know so well, expansive warmth and joy and close loving families at home. Let's try and look at the video. Well, we haven't succeeded, so we'll have to put that on the web so that everybody can see this very, very beautiful video and hear that extraordinary music. Please welcome the Archbishop, the Rabbi, and the Imam to receive this Common Ground Award for their unswerving commitment to uniting the Abrahamic family. I'm a bit thrown by not having the video. That's not the order things are meant to happen in. So we will now invite our three esteemed and just extraordinary people to come and speak for a few minutes each. George.
Susan, ladies and gentlemen, it's a real honor to be here with my two dear friends, and we've worked so well together over so many years. And to receive this award with such glittering company, it really is very humbling indeed. It was said of Christopher Columbus that when he set out to discover the New World, that when he set out, he didn't know where he was going. When he got there, he didn't know where he was. And when he returned home, he didn't know where he'd been. I think that may be the story of life generally, but I wonder if that was perhaps John, Mark's, and later Susan's feeling when they set out in that frail vessel, the search for common ground 30 years ago. 30 years ago, interfaith experience was very fragile and thin on the ground. Certainly that was so in the United Kingdom. Today, interfaith collaboration is seen as one of the most important elements in bridge building, in building society today. And governments today are much more inclined to support the kind of work that Search for Common Ground is doing than perhaps they used to. For myself, on becoming Archbishop of Canterbury in 1991, I remember thinking that one of my roles, including cooperation with other religious leaders, but it was a harmless diversion from the more important aspects of an Archbishop of Canterbury's work. It turned out to be one of the most fundamental and important aspects of my work, and far more humbling than I could ever imagine in working with people of such stature. The Chief Rabbi of the United Kingdom, who's a very dear friend, Sheikh Zaki Bedoui, also a dear friend until he passed away in 2006, I think it was. And what has happened to me is a life-changing thing, because you change, because you realize that the spiritual experience of other people are the same as your own. And you find yourself growing in that kind of way. But it was 9/11 that gave this work a fearful urgency, not only in the United Kingdom, because we were jolted into an awareness that we had to resist complacency. I recall Tony Blair phoning me soon after 9/11 to say, isn't it time we set up some very serious intellectual work between Jews, Muslims, and Christians? And so we launched at Lambeth Palace, shortly after 9/11, a seminar called Building Bridges, which continues to this day. I recall Shimon Peres phoning one day to ask for help in starting a new initiative in the Holy Land, and Rabbi David Rosen and I were involved in that. And then Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum phoning also to say, could we set something up with the World Economic Forum after 9/11? And we met in New York, and Imam Faisal, David, and myself were among the first leaders of that. These and many other initiatives reveal the energy that's gone into the interfaith dialogue, in which Search for Common Ground has been such a wonderful pioneer. In all this work, I've been helped, as my colleagues have, by a dear wife and colleague. I love David's word that every marriage is a minor miracle. Well, we've had a miracle for 52 years. I couldn't do without her, and I'm glad that she is sharing this evening with me. Thank you very much indeed.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It is customary, ladies and gentlemen, for Muslims to begin by invoking the name of the Almighty, the All-Merciful, and the All-Compassionate God, the Creator of the heavens and the earth and all that is between them, the God of Moses, the God of Jesus Christ, the God of Muhammad. Peace and blessings be upon all of these noble prophets and messengers. Ladies and gentlemen, and if you'll permit me to speak to an empty chair, to Secretary Clinton, who many of us hope and pray will be the next president of the United States. I thank you for being here. And I also thank Susan Collins Marks and John Marks for their great generosity in seeking to gift us, and to gift me in particular, with this wonderful award. I'm reminded of a saying of our Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, that in speaking about charity, that the hand that gives is greater than the hand that receives. And therefore we believe, I certainly believe, that you, more than all of us combined, deserve this particular award for your 30 years of peace and commitment to peace, and for creating a common ground that is not just ground in the earth, in the sense of earth, but the common ground of human hearts and human souls who are committed to, in the words of Jesus Christ, being the peacemakers. Blessed be the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God, or the people of God. And it is with this sense of a commitment, not so much to peace as peace only, but to peace as salam. There's one of the 99 names of God in the Islamic faith, as shalom, but as something that speaks to the very nature of divinity itself. And that in bearing witness to God, which is the commandment that every Muslim is commanded to do, to bear witness that there is no God but God, and that Muhammad is his messenger. And in these two testaments of faith, to bear witness to all the attributes of God, to God as beauty, and most importantly to God as peace. And to find that peace within ourselves, and to build it within ourselves and within our community. In this day and age, a time when we are in an increasingly globalized world, in a time when we see polarizations happening even within our own political demographic in the United States of America, in a time when polarization needs ever more a greater commitment to peace building and to bridging the polarizations that exist between us, I'm convinced that we can do this. For there's no problem that human beings have created that human beings cannot solve. And so I thank you, and I thank Ann Stevens, whose smile seems to be a signature smile of the Stevens family. We're so grateful for you to be here. And I'd like to show you that the very clip of Libyans praising Ambassador Stevens indicates that the work that I've committed myself to, that is bridging the relationships between the Muslim world and the Western world, is something that can actually be attained. The Libyans loved Ambassador Stevens. They loved America. The Muslims do love America and love the West. And I'm convinced that with our combined work together, we can in fact succeed in bringing about such a global world peace. Thank you, and may God bless you all, and thank you to my colleagues.
Many of you will know the Jewish joke about this mother, good Jewish mother, whose son was behaving rather peculiarly, and she took him to see this psychologist, who after an examination said to her, Mrs. Cohen, I'm afraid your son has an Oedipus complex. And she said, Oedipus Schmiedipus, as long as he's a good boy and loves his mother. And in a sense, I feel this evening that I can say nepotism, schmepotism, as long as I'm getting the recognition. And I don't mean just the nepotism because, of course, my wonderful wife, Sharon, together with Suhair Rasul, co-direct the Jerusalem office of Search for Common Ground, which already puts me to some extent under certain dubious legitimacy. But because long before Sharon was actually employed by John and Susan were good friends, and very dear friends very quickly, to the degree that our home is their home, and we really feel they are family. So I really feel that I'm a family beneficiary this evening. But obviously that slight embarrassment is not so intense that it prevents me from accepting the recognition. Actually, there are many wonderful connections that we have that we discovered subsequently. I came to interfaith relations as rabbi of the largest congregation in South Africa during the apartheid era because I wanted to find a way of overcoming the separation between the communities. So I came to interfaith relations out of a commitment to social justice. But I discovered how enormously important it was in and of itself, as Lord Carey has indicated. And then when I was Chief Rabbi of Ireland, as a predecessor of mine said, 95% of the country is Catholic, 5% is Protestant, and I'm Chief Rabbi of the rest. I don't really have much to do other than to build interfaith relations. So it's a little bit of an exaggeration, of course, because when I was Chief Rabbi, there were more Jews in the Dáil in the Irish Parliament than there were Protestants, and there were Jewish Lord Mayors of all the major cities. But it meant, obviously, that interfaith relations became an essential part of my own vocation, and it is indeed my passion. But when we came back home to Jerusalem, it became even more critical and important. And it was that while we were in Jerusalem that John and Susan came there, and our paths crossed, and the, if you like, the fusion between their work and our work produced hopefully some very significant fruit. Therefore, I would like, in conclusion, to be able to say not only thank you for this recognition to John and Susan, to Search for Common Ground, and to all the wonderful people who do the fantastic work they do across the world, but thank you for this recognition of an Interfaith Award in and of itself, because what you're saying by that is that you appreciate the enormous potential and power for good that religion can and should be, and that you recognize that all too often, tragically, that wonderful potential is abused and desecrated. And above all, what unfortunately many politicians and diplomats have not yet understood is that if you don't want religion to be part of the problem, you have to make it part of the solution. And you have to engage the religious communities in a constructive manner in order for that wonderful potential within the spiritual heritages of our different communities and of our world to be able to be realized. So thank you for that. Thank you for the recognition. And thank you for putting me together with these wonderful colleagues of mine, very special people, and for the recognition that we are able to enjoy, that I am able to enjoy, together with Archbishop Carey and Lady Eileen, with Imam Faisal and Daisy Khan, and with my very beautiful and very wise wife, Sharon. Thank you.
We are not done. As they've all said, they didn't do this alone. Their wives, the loves of their lives, have walked every step of the way beside them on this healing journey. And we want to honor Daisy Khan, Sharon Rosen, and Lady Eileen Carey, who in their own rights and in this partnership bring healing to our world. Please welcome these three extraordinary women to the stage. And now, please welcome Flower Girls, Zoe Popovici, Jenny Devette Brown, and Ariana Marie Antoinette Brown. We've never had so many people on the stage. Well, what a beautiful award, what beautiful flowers, what beautiful girls. Thank you for staying up late tonight to be with us. I don't think you minded, actually. And thank you for being such a heartfelt, heartwarming audience. As we close, I want to thank the Search Awards team, who are great in numbers and great in achievement. So please stand, all of you, so that we can thank you, see you, and say, what a magnificent job Let's give them a magnificent round of applause. And thank you to Byron Buck, who very graciously agreed once again to take our photographs. Yes. And now let's invite our awardees to stand so we can show them our love and gratitude with one more round of applause. Please, all awardees. We're going to show the videos that we missed in the reception at the end, but we're not there yet. You have a few more things to come, and one of them is to welcome John Marks, the founder and president of Search for Common Ground, and my beloved husband, who will speak to this moving, heartfelt, inspiring, and hopeful evening. John.
I want to escalate. David Wolcomb talked about a minor miracle of marriage. I want to go for a major miracle. And I have a major miracle. Susan Collin Marks. And who brings to my life and to my work and to this ceremony and to this event a heart and a wonder and all this stuff. So thank you, Susan Collin Marks. I only have a couple of minutes, and I just want to recall a few key lines that we've heard, a few key ideas. It started with the secretary describing how Chris Stevens was pouring out his heart. She talked of his willingness to improvise, to create, to do stuff from zero and make it happen across the world. She talked of so many moments of common ground, and there was said he was an inspiration. All our people we've given these awards to in the organizations have been an inspiration. We heard about appreciating there is nothing wrong with being different. I like that one a lot. Former enemies can be reconciled. Sweet dreams. I should probably have done that one last. We heard about a culture of unity. We heard about bringing young people together to find common ground. And we heard our work is never finished. I was looking forward to unemployment too. God's love is too great to be confined to one religion. The same journey that we're on, and we're building bridges. And then lastly, the common ground of human hearts. I'm moved by what I've heard. I'm moved by you. I'm moved by the work that I do, and I love it, and I love doing this. And so thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, John. 30th birthdays should always be celebrated all year and always with cake. Here is Search's birthday cake, which we are presenting to John, who began it all in 1982. You will have your cake and eat it too at the reception. The cake should appear, and John, actually, you should be back here on the stage. Please remain seated while the awardees and the cake leave first for the reception, which is just outside these doors. And we'll see you there. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being such a wonderful audience.